Φίλες και φίλοι, καλησπέρα σας σε μία ακόμα εκπομπή με τίτλο «Διαλέγω Καριέρα». Βρισκόμαστε στον επαγγελματικό χώρο του δικηγορικού γραφείου Stockholm Partnerships Solicitors και έχουμε μαζί μας δύο πολύ καλούς δικηγόρους με σπουδαία φήμη στο Λονδίνο από την Κύπρο, οι οποίοι θα μας μιλήσουν, θα μας δώσουν τα φώτα τους για αυτό το επάγγελμα, για όσους από εσάς θέλετε να ακολουθήσετε αυτήν την επαγγελματική οδό. Ιδρυτής αυτής της εταιρείας, αυτού του δικηγορικού γραφείου, είναι ο Bambo Tsiattallou από την Κύπρο, ο οποίος χαίρει ισχυρής φήμης όσον αφορά τις ποινικές υποθέσεις, και μαζί του είναι ο Pavlos Panayis, που έχει τον υψηλότερο τίτλο δικηγόρου στην Αγγλία, όπως μου έχετε πει, είστε Queen's Counsel. Και ασχολείστε με πολλά θέματα από ό,τι έχω μάθει, με οικονομικά εγκλήματα, τρομοκρατία, ανθρωποκτονία, οργανωμένο έγκλημα και πολλά άλλα. Είναι τιμή μας, it is our honor that you are here with us. Είναι τιμή μας που είστε εδώ κοντά μας. Η εκπομπή μας θα μας μιλήσουν στα αγγλικά, εδώ οι καλεσμένοι μας, ως Κύπροι της δεύτερης γενιάς, και θα μας διαφωτίσουν για το επάγγελμα του δικηγόρου. Welcome to our TV program.
Thank you very much, Miss. Thank you for having us.
First of all, where are you from? From which city of Cyprus you came from?
Well, my father was from a little village outside Bafo called Hellenic, and my mother originally from a village called Githrea, but most of my family now are in Lefkosia, in Bafo, and in Lemeso.
Okay, what about you?
My father's village is Birkos Lemeso, which is just outside of Lemeso, and my mother's village is Patriki, Eparchiamosto.
Okay, I would like to ask you about the profession of a lawyer. What does a day of a lawyer involve?
Well, it's infinitely varied. It depends what kind of lawyer you are, what areas of practice you do. But we can speak about our own experience. We work on different sides of the legal profession in this country, which is divided between barristers and solicitors. Bambos is a solicitor and the founder of this firm. And so your work is litigation.
Yes.
And I'm a barrister, so my focus is on advocacy and what happens in court.
Mm-hmm.
So unlike many jurisdictions, we still have a divided profession. So in theory, the preparation of a case is prepared by the solicitor and is then handed to barristers, which is what Pavlos is. And in his case, being Queen's Counsel, does the most serious cases, and Pavlos is responsible for presenting it in court rather than the preparation.
Mm-hmm. Bambos, tell us few words about your company. How did you start your career here?
Well, I actually started life as a barrister as well, back in 1991. Practiced as a barrister until 94, and then decided I wanted to become a solicitor. So I took different exams and transferred, became a solicitor, and soon after I qualified as a solicitor, I set up the Stockholm Partnership, which was around 94-95, with a small office in East London, and from there, over the years, it's grown to now having 3 offices around the country, employing a large number of staff. So from being a sole practitioner, setting the business up on my own, it's now developed into a partnership with many solicitors employed here.
So you were very ambitious for your job, right?
Yes, yeah, and as a result of being ambitious and lucky, I suppose, the business has grown.
Why you say that you were lucky?
Everyone has to have a little bit of luck. Mm-hmm. So,
what are the cases that your office undertakes?
the business has developed over the years from dealing with minor offences to now dealing with the most serious offences, ranging from murders to the most complicated fraud and corruption cases. From a criminal perspective, we also involve ourselves in civil cases and arbitration work, as well as extradition. So we offer a wide range of services now, as opposed to how we started off in '94, which was predominantly a criminal practice.
Έχω διαβάσει ότι ασχολείστε με εγκλήματα, με crimes του λευκού κολάρου, δηλαδή εγκλήματα που υπάρχουν στις κυβερνήσεις, με υπουργούς, with ministers.
Yes, we've done corruption cases.
Yes.
A wide range of corruption cases over the years.
Why do you think that we have seen so many cases of corruption throughout the years?
Well,
it's the nature, but I think
these things
the
aren't new.
Corruption Act
Yes.
has brought it more to the fore.
Yeah.
But
I don't think there's any more corruption. I mean, there's always been a kind of difficulty with power, which always corrupts, and there are always temptations. But yes, the Bribery and Corruption Act has become big news, and now businesses find themselves liable as corporate defendants if they don't take steps to ensure that there are systems in place to guard against corruption. And it's a great part of the work that the Serious Fraud Office does, and a great number of businesses and individuals require advice on these areas, and there's a growth in prosecutions. And I think it's fair to say that Britain has led the world in the way in which it's legislated in anti-corruption. And it's part of growing compliance age, where internationally it's understood that countries can't take a laissez-faire approach to these things, and there's a growing wave of international enforcement in areas such as bribery and corruption.
I think as time goes on, regulation increases.
Yes.
And as a result of that regulation over the years, bribery and corruption has been documented and regulated more recently. Yeah. And it is one of the hot topics, and one of the most prevalent
I think so.
Prosecutions at the moment.
And I think the media and the press and social media and international scandals have driven that. And the days when we grew up in this job, you would have money disappearing off into hidden bank accounts in jurisdictions that had very light touch regulation. Those days are over, and a searching light is being spread over international finance, and there are fewer and fewer places where that can go.
And I think the way people perceive facts change over the years, and what's accepted in one era isn't accepted in another era. So I think that's probably true with bribery and corruption.
Yeah, I think so. There's definitely a change in culture.
Yes.
Or maybe because of the dissemination of the information, now people know more, have more. They are more disposed to the information because of
I think so.
social media.
Yeah, I think so.
And the growing spread of information.
Yeah.
I would like to ask you, how many lawyers work for your office?
Spread across the 3 offices, because we have an office in East London, Central London and Manchester. We've got probably 25, 30 lawyers.
Was it difficult to build your own company?
Yes, it was. And when you're setting up a solicitor's practice, you have to worry about the regulations, because you're governed by the SRA, and there are many rules and regulations you have to follow. So essentially your administration and your backroom staff have to know what they're doing as well. So it's not a straightforward process.
So now I'm coming to you, Pavlo. I would like to ask you about your ambitions when you were a young lawyer, when you graduated.
Many years ago.
Many years ago, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I ended up, like many young people, doing a law degree without any fixed idea of what career I wanted to do in the end. And law was a safe degree, but I didn't have...
probably the same, probably the case with most of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I didn't have a burning ambition at that stage to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
But lots of choices have to be made very quickly, and the fundamental choice in this jurisdiction is whether to be a solicitor or a barrister. And if you make that choice, you very quickly have to make the choice as to which area to specialise in. In this country, lawyers love specialising, and they, I think, specialise too quickly. I went to a talk that a very famous criminal barrister gave to a group of students in a temple, and he was describing the life of a pupil barrister in criminal practice, and I was completely hooked. Completely hooked. And then I sat in the public gallery at the Old Bailey for what should have been an hour, and became the day, and then I went back the following day, and I saw people, you know, in antiquated costumes with wigs and gowns, but in the business of presenting a case in front of a jury in the most serious work that we do in an incredible building just half a mile from here. So I was quite sure then that I wanted to be a criminal barrister. These things are easier said than done, and I didn't know in my family anybody who was a lawyer of any kind or variety. My papa was Vosco back in the mountains of Bafo, and my mother's family were from very modest beginnings, and everybody in my family, like so many Cypriots, had their own business of one kind or another, sort of generally retail and food. So I didn't have anybody I could go and speak to about this, but I went out and got experience and did my what are called mini pupilages, which is unpaid work experience for a week or two in different barristers' chambers, and I applied for pupilages, and I was lucky enough to be given a pupilage at the chambers of Sir Desmond de Silva QC, which in those days, it doesn't exist anymore, but in those days was very much a set of chambers that had an international outlook and had a Commonwealth tradition.
He was a legend.
He was a legend, Desmond was.
Yeah.
And he would work around the world in lots of Commonwealth jurisdictions, did lots of work in Gibraltar and in Africa, worked around the world, and had a sort of grace and elegance and skill and mischief, which I think epitomised those chambers. He had lots of interesting characters, but I was being exposed to it, a young man without any experience of this. Above all, they were advocates, and for me, the thing that excited me and drove my ambition was the idea that the words that come out of your mouth can change people's minds and have an impact on the outcome of serious cases. So I was taken on as a tenant there, so I was given a permanent position after my pupilage, and I stayed there for 7 years, and then moved on to my next set of chambers, which were the chambers of Richard Ferguson QC, who was a famous Northern Irish silk, who did some of the seminal terrorist cases.
Another legend.
Another legend. And I was lucky enough to work with him in the London bombings case after the bombings in 2005 in London, and did some very interesting work over the years until in 2014 was appointed to Silk, so I became a QC, a Queen's Counsel, and at that point the nature of my practice changed, and now, as Bambo said, I only do the most serious cases, which tend to be about half of my professional life is fraud, financial crime, financial regulatory work, and about half is general crime, so murder and terrorism. And quite a big part of my work is advising in Cyprus, so I do a decent proportion of work in Cyprus. I travel over there now 5 or 6 times a year. I've got very strong contacts with the legal community in Cyprus, and I speak to their lawyers. I came back a few weeks ago having done that. So I think I've got the perfect, for me anyway, the perfect combination of work, because I get to go back to our wonderful island.
So you go back to Cyprus, you work here?
Yes, I do, yes. I mean, the work out there is generally advisory, because Cyprus is a common law jurisdiction, and so the work that we do in our courts here has a direct relevance in some of the work that comes before the Cypriot courts, and they sometimes require advice, which I'm able to give. So that's the balance of my work, and I couldn't have been, to use the word luckier, to find myself in the position I'm in now.
How did you manage to be a QC? I mean, how a young person can be a QC?
It's the process involves applying to the Queen's Counsel Appointments Commission, the QACA. You, in the old days, would just be tapped on the shoulder by a senior member of the profession and told it would be a good idea for you to apply for Silk, and that wasn't transparent, and the system didn't always achieve the right outcomes. So the government conducted a review, and the Bar Council, the solicitors' profession, looked very closely at this. And so an independent body will receive applications from people who want to apply for Silk. And what you normally have to do, or at least when I applied, is set out 12 cases of real importance and substance that you've done over a 2-year period. And in criminal work, that means you're, in effect, describing everything you've done over 2 years, and you provide the names of all the judges, and they are contacted by the Commission and asked for confidential references in 6 different areas of competency. Your excellence in advocacy through oral advocacy in court, written advocacy, your integrity, your diversity, your understanding of diversity issues, and in all of these different areas you're judged, and you have to show that you are outstanding, if you can, and about half the people who apply are interviewed, and then of those, proportion are lucky enough to take Silk. So every year there are about 100, it's normally about 100 new QCs, and a small proportion of those, I think 10 or 20, would be criminal lawyers.
So you have to be experienced, too much experience to achieve these achievements. Yeah,
there are 2 things. You have to do work of the right type. So if it isn't a really important case, then it won't qualify. And having done a case as serious and important as that, which is normally in front of very senior judges, so High Court judges, sometimes Lord Justices of Appeal, or even the Lord Chief Justice, you then have to put their names forward and hope that those judges are prepared to say that this person isn't just good or above average, but has achieved a level of excellence that entitles them to this rank.
It's effectively a recognition that you're the cream of the profession.
Yeah, of course, yes. I would like to ask you as well, which were the difficulties during this process to be a successful lawyer? I'm asking both of you.
I think there are difficulties coming from the backgrounds we come from, because your initial opportunity to become part of the profession is quite hard, because my parents are not lawyers, so the contacts that I would have in the legal profession are very limited. And for example, like Pavlos, when I went to university and started my law degree, I really didn't know much about it, and even at that stage I didn't quite appreciate the difference between barristers and solicitors and the different roles they have and what it involves, because obviously what Pavlo and I do is quite different. I run a business with 3 offices, with lots and lots of staff, and as well as running my own caseload and preparing my cases, I'm running a business, which is why I transfer from becoming a barrister to a solicitor, because I was attracted by, you know, the excitement of running a business, whereas, you know, Pavlos is a sole practitioner effectively. He's on his own, even though he works as part of a set of chambers. He's an individual within those chambers, but he's on his own. And I think, you know, the difficulties that exist as a young student coming through is you have to understand exactly what you're getting yourself in for, what you want to do, and be decisive with what you want to do, and having the contacts. You know, my parents were bakers, so I had no contacts in the legal profession. So, you know, I was lucky enough to be given an opportunity for pupillage, because I started life like he is now. So I think that the main difficulties with people coming in the profession is they have to take the opportunity early on to get themselves into either firms of solicitors for small periods of time to build their contacts up, or as Pavlo did with a mini pupillage, which is, you know, 1 or 2 weeks in a set of chambers with a barrister. And I think that side of things is probably the most difficult in our area, isn't it?
Well, I think so. I mean, when we started, the biggest challenge was it's just the psychological challenge and your expectations, because you and I started and we looked at the legal profession in this country, and it was predominantly English men from, generally speaking, a public school background, and nobody that looked like us or came from our background was there, and your expectations are affected by that, because you just feel, and it's very easy to feel, that there's no place for you.
Yeah, you've got to be confident enough that you're going to do it. But at
now it's changed.
At the beginning though, when you're thrown into this, you don't know what to expect. I mean, you know, when I turned up to chambers for my pupillage interview, I mean, it was another world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and one of the reasons that I was attracted to Desmond's chambers was that really was the exception. It was a set of chambers that was multicultural and international, and people had lots of different backgrounds. You know, Desmond had former pupils who went on to become, you know, presidents of one country or another.
Yeah.
And it was a set of chambers that really embraced that. So I found that a really exciting thing. These days, young Cypriots will look at the profession and they'll see not just people like you and me, but people up and down who are QCs and serious juniors who work in law firms as partners, or have founded their own businesses, or are just starting out. And they can see a very, very different profession which has changed for the better. And the opportunities for work experience are much greater, I think, than they used to be. And it's important to get out there and talk to people and find out if that's what you really want to do. It's much more competitive, I think, now than it was maybe 5 or 10 years ago. So, especially at the bar, there is a greater quantity of people that are seeking pupillage, and then among those people who are seeking tenancy. But that shouldn't put off those who are truly excellent.
Yes.
And we've got some, you know, really highly educated community of young people, mainly in London, but Cypriots now of the 2nd and 3rd generations, who are very ambitious and intelligent, have gone to the best universities, and have got this body of other Cypriots who have already begun their careers, or they're some way through their careers.
I think from that perspective, the generation coming through now have probably got more opportunities, because more of us are now,
I think so,
in places, and I always look out for youngsters who want an opportunity, and us, Stoker Partnership as a business, go out of our way to give youngsters, not only Cypriot youngsters or Greek youngsters, but most youngsters the opportunity, because it is tough out there, and they need to be given a chance.
No, and in chambers, so I'm barristers work in, as Bambo said, self-employed strictly speaking, but they work in sets of chambers with other barristers. At 7 Bedford Row, where I am, there are about 80 of us, about 10 of us are QCs. We have pupils that come through every year, but we have social mobility programs in place. We monitor our social mobility, not just the ethnic diversity and the gender diversity, but also where people are coming from. is there a sort of a bias towards people who come from privileged backgrounds, or are we completely transparent and offer a fair opportunity? So we offer work experience, mini pupilages, sometimes people can come and shadow for a day or two, and we hope that the experience of the last few years of young tenant that we've got shows that people really do come from all backgrounds. So it is much easier, I think.
And when they do turn up, they do find it exciting, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is exciting. I mean, what we do is interesting.
Yeah. And it's a big thing for students of sort of between the ages of 16 and 18 before they go to university. During that period, they some of them will just turn up and they do find it so exciting. It does influence what they do.
Well, we were having a conversation just before this interview started. Bambos is preparing, among other things, a murder trial at the moment. I'm in the middle of a murder trial at the Old Bailey. I'm about to call my client to give evidence. When we are preparing our work, we're preparing cases involving, so last year I did a big terrorism case that was in the news. It was a far-right terrorism case, defendants from Her Majesty's Armed Forces. You work in cases with an international dimension, you travel around the world, and these are really serious cases, but they're fascinating.
Yeah.
And what we're very,
every case is different.
Yeah.
Well, every case is different.
And the privilege is that you do every year a different diet of work.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you something, but you have already answered.
Oops, sorry.
We've gone rambling on, haven't we?
It's okay.
You can't shut us up, that's the problem.
I wanted to ask you, what do you enjoy in your job? But you have already answered.
It also, I think the other important thing for me is one reason I chose to transfer from being a barrister to a solicitor is that to a certain degree you make choices as to who you work with. With barristers it's sometimes more difficult to choose who you work with, whereas I govern completely who I choose to work with. So, I choose to instruct Pavlos, or I choose to instruct somebody else, and for me that's a really important part of the job, because unavoidably it means most of the time I'm working with people I really want to work with. So
this is very important.
It's a huge satisfaction
to cooperate with people that suit you.
Absolutely, definitely.
I would also ask you, what are the qualities that a person needs to be a lawyer?
I think you have to like people. I think you have to find people interesting. The practice of law, when you stand back and think about it, it isn't so complicated. The practice of law involves finding ways of solving people's problems when they're in conflict with each other, and when they can't solve their own problems, they go to another person who is normally a judge or an arbitrator or a mediator to help them solve their problems. And if you like people, if you find their problems interesting, if you understand the human emotions, even in complex financial cases, there are individuals behind those pieces of paper. And you're prepared to put yourself in the position of your client or your client company and argue their case, then I think that's important. You've got to have tremendous drive and stamina. You work hard in this job all the way through. It's hard work. It's hard work. You have to be prepared for your personal life and your free time to sometimes be encroached on by the work you do, because you may have a client who has everything to lose, and that's just more important than your weekend. In the end, it's more important than your weekend.
I think you have to make a decision as to, going back to how ambitious you are and how serious you take the job. For example, I've been on holiday with my family where I've had to leave them and come back to have a meeting on a case because something's developed. Many people wouldn't, but I think it very much depends on how you are and if you strive for perfection or if you don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think there are different levels of
lawyers,
service that you provide.
Absolutely, and I think all lawyers will describe those sorts of situations. So when you're in a crisis point in a case, it really is a case of everybody doing everything they can. And if you take the work seriously and you understand its importance, then you will make those sacrifices. I mean, the quid pro quo is that, especially at the bar, there are compensations. So I'm self-employed, so I govern my time. I choose how much work I want to take on. If I want a gap between cases, I can build that into my diary. It's much more difficult, I think, at the junior end where you're building your career and you're building your practice. But I try and maintain a proper work-life balance.
You can be more independent, right?
Yeah,
exactly. Whereas, obviously, being a solicitor and being one of the main partners in the practice, you're less free because you have to supervise the business, even though you've got backroom staff doing it. At the end of the day, the responsibility falls on the main partners.
Mm-hmm. I would like also to ask you, what would you advise the student that would like to be lawyers?
Work hard on your grades, go to the best university you can. It's really competitive now. Get some experience, I think.
Experience.
Yeah.
I think for me, experience is important. Getting your foot in the door with a firm of solicitors, or going and doing a mini pupillage in a chambers, and getting out there, meeting the profession, because sometimes the paper applications don't reflect the true person. So if you're lucky enough to have the opportunity to meet lawyers who are in practice, for me that makes a big difference.
Yeah, and for a career at the bar, absolutely the experience that you can get in advocacy matters hugely. Debating and mooting, if you have those sorts of opportunities at university, are really important. Distinguishing yourself. I mean, I think at the bar, quite often what matters as much as what's on your CV is your experience of life, and it's hard to get. But people that have taken a year or sometimes 2 years out and done other things, or they've travelled, it just means that you can more credibly look a client in the eye who might be older than you, dealing with a kind of business that you've never dreamt of, and give them advice, and for them to trust you, and for you to have the character to be able to credibly engage with your client. It's very hard if you're a young barrister and you're sent out on your first case. Having a bit of experience of life, just being solid, matters. But these days it's very, very competitive. We get applicants who have come from the best universities with the best degrees, and they're all fighting against each other. And I wouldn't emphasise enough that people watching this who are in their first or second year at university, you just have to work really hard and get the best grades you can. And then, as Bambo says, get out there.
But that's why, I mean, there are so many youngsters and newly qualified graduates now whose grades are all brilliant. So what makes one different from the other, for me, is the one who has managed to get himself or herself out there and has met half a dozen firms of lawyers.
Yes.
And when they come to talk to you in an interview, for example, they say, well, I've spent time with this firm and this firm and this firm, and this is the work I've done. Or I've been to this chambers and done this and done this.
Absolutely.
Or even I've sat through a trial at the Old Bailey or in the commercial court for 2 weeks because I find it interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what separates, for me, most people, and it takes away just reading the CV of somebody.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you can quite often tell in the first few minutes speaking to somebody if they have got that additional dimension to them. It's very hard on paper, and particularly with standardised applications. So for the bar, you've got, for those chambers that use the old PAS system, you've got standardised forms. It's very easy for people to just say the same things all the time. But go and do some on-paid work experience. Ring up a firm or write to them.
Ring up Stoker Partnership, that's what you were going to say, weren't you?
I was going to say ring up a firm or write to them. Quite often websites will describe these opportunities. Go and do some unpaid work experience. Get out there, see the job. And also be sure, because there are sacrifices, be quite sure that that's what you want to do. And this is a two-way process. Quite a lot of students will want to really find out whether this is for them. There's nothing like seeing it to know that.
Και αυτό δημιουργεί μια πιο confident personality. You become more confident when you work in many workplaces, when you meet so many successful professionals from the legal profession.
Yes.
Okay. I would like to thank you at this point to be here. in our TV program. Είχαμε, κυρίες και κύριοι, την ευκαιρία να έχουμε μαζί μας δύο άξιους εκπροσώπους του δικηγορικού επαγγέλματος που μας κάνουν περήφανους εδώ στο Λονδίνο, δικηγόρους από την Κύπρο. Πραγματικά είναι υπέροχο να βλέπουμε ανθρώπους από την Κύπρο που πετυχαίνουν σε μια πολυπολιτισμική χώρα, όπου υπάρχουν σίγουρα δύσκολες συνθήκες, μας τις έχετε περιγράψει. Ελπίζουμε να σας δώσαμε πολλά στοιχεία, πολλές πληροφορίες σχετικά με αυτό το επάγγελμα μέσα από την εμπειρία, μέσα από τις εμπειρίες και του Πάμπου και του Παύλου. Ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ που ήσασταν μαζί μας. Ήταν πραγματικά τιμή μας. Σε αυτό το σημείο να σας καληνυχτήσουμε, καλό σας βράδυ και ραντεβού την επόμενη Κυριακή.